Good afternoon and welcome. I think there are a few new faces in the crowd, so if we haven't met yet, I am the Arlene and Harold Snitzer Curator of Asian Art here at the museum. And it has been my privilege to know today's speaker, Sangah Kim, for just about 4 years. Sangah was born and raised in Seoul, Korea, and for her BA at Korea University, which is one of the premier private universities, she majored in Chinese language and literature and also journalism. She was also the director of the university's wind orchestra, in which she played the trumpet. These things, wonderful things that you don't know about people until you read their resumes closely. And then she went on for an MA at the same university, again in Chinese studies, which included a full long semester in Beijing. So equipped with extraordinary fluency, actually she won an award for her Chinese as well as her native Korean and English, she came to the United States in 2014 to pursue a second MA, but this time in art history, at the University of Oregon in Eugene. And that is where she and I originally met. She came to us originally as a short-term volunteer intern. And that's sort of a category that is going out of existence. The American Association of Museum Directors has finally realized that having people be volunteer interns is so exploitative that it shouldn't happen. So I'm glad that Sangah squeaked in the old days, but she was just with us for 2 months, but in those 2 months she proved to be an extraordinary and an invaluable asset with her linguistic skills, her amazing work ethic, and her research skills. She was able, even in a very short time, to contribute significant research to the collection. So the following year, through a sort of unplanned sequence of events, Mary and Cheney Cowles, who are the owners who have lent the Korean paintings to the exhibition, made a generous donation that allowed us to create the position for a curatorial fellow here, curatorial fellow in Asian art. And the idea was that this person could take on some of the day-to-day tasks of researching the collection, dealing with gallery rotations, and so on, so that I could spend more time concentrating on their collection exhibition, Poetic Imagination Japanese Art, which was the major exhibition last fall. So we held a nationwide search, and quite a few people with PhDs applied. Sometimes in topics that were pretty far away from what we were interested in. Long story short, Sangah emerged without question as the top candidate. And so in the past 3 years, she has taken the lead in curating the gallery rotations in the Korean and Chinese galleries. And she has played a central role in helping the museum forge relationships with cultural institutions and organizations in both Korea and China. Some of the really important exhibitions that she's done that got a lot of attention include her research with us for the 5 Buddhas, the exhibition of treasures from the Matyali collection, which concluded with the museum facilitating. We were just facilitators, no more, but we were able to have a symposium and a cultural evening in repatriating to Korea a very significant Buddhist painting dated to the early 17th century. And then that was followed up the next year with a trip to Korea with the museum director and the Matyali as the donors and some others, in which Sangah sort of organized everything. So she's become our important link to both Songgwangsa Monastery and the other groups that we met in Korea. Another exhibition that she did that got a lot of attention, I've heard it a lot about from the public, was The Shape of the Land, where she looked at our quite unusual aerial view, sort of bird's eye view of the city of Pyongyang with the festival happening, and then compared that to sort of more popular maps made in Korea in the late Joseon period. But today we are here to celebrate her most ambitious project to date, Squirrels, Tigers, and Towering Peaks, Korean paintings from the Mary and Cheney Cowles collection. So before I call Sangah to the stage, however, I would like to ask for a round of applause for Mary and Cheney Cowles, who are here today. And now I turn the podium over to Sangah Kim.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Good afternoon, everyone, again. Yeah, and thank you for coming out to this event, especially on such a beautiful day. It is so nice to see all of you. Today, I'm very blessed to have this opportunity to talk about Korean ink paintings with specific focus on the current exhibition at the museum called Squirrels, Tigers, and Towering Peaks. Before I start, I want to thank many people who made this exhibition possible. First, Marybeth Graybill. She always supports this project and gives valuable advice. And many people in Curatorial department also provide help and support, especially Jeannie and Charles. Thank you. We have great prep team at the museum to make the gallery beautiful, and also staffs on design and video team were always supportive. Even though not being here today, Professor Jung-hae Park of the Academy of Korean Studies visited Portland all the way from Korea to help identify and date the paintings. And Professor Lei Xue from the Oregon State University also helped decipher many seals and inscriptions of the painting. Thank you, everyone. This is my capstone project at the museum, like Marybeth said. And I want to also thank many people who made my last 3 years a sparkling moment. I want to personally thank Jen Quivy, who is in this festival at the museum and always has been my good friend. And Asian Art Council members, thank you for your passion and enthusiasm for Asian art and sponsoring today's event. And Marybeth, again, I'm sincerely thankful for your guidance and your encouragement. This journey that I've started in 2016 would not have been possible without Mary and Cheney Cowles, who are also the collector of these Korean paintings. I started this curatorial fellow with Mary and Cheney's support, and it is only fitting that today I present this final presentation on their collection. I cannot thank enough for your continuous support my last 3 years, and also and also share your collections with us. Mary and Cheney, thank you very much. The plan for the exhibition Squirrels, Tigers, and Towering Peaks all started last year when Marybeth, Jeannie, and I visited Mary and Cheney's house in Seattle. We were preparing for the exhibition Poetic Imagination in Japanese Art. And when we visited their house, Cheney showed us these beautiful Korean paintings. And when he brought out these paintings one by one, we grew curious and we were astounded by its beauty. Korean paintings of this quality and condition are very, very rare in the United States. Because Korea underwent many wars and turbulent periods, and it is known that many of them were damaged and very likely lost. Today, we are fortunate that Cheney is willing to share these Korean paintings. He acquired them mostly from Japan, so you can clearly see from the exhibition that many of them are in a Japanese-style mounting. The exhibition has 13 paintings and 1 calligraphy screen, all from the Joseon dynasty of Korea. Although the scale of the exhibit is modest, this beautiful painting will make you immerse yourself in one part of Korean aesthetics. These paintings are all of similar subjects and give us the idea and opportunity to study each work not only individually, but also in comparison to one another and see the different brushwork and composition. And today, my talk will focus on style and symbols in Korean ink painting. Before we start, let's have a look at these images, and let me ask you this question. What do you see in these images? Grapes. Squirrel eating grapes. And tiger, right? So, does tiger is it just a scary animal to you? And what do they mean to you? These are subject matters that we will look at today. And we will talk about how certain subject matter plays a role in Korean paintings and the symbolic meanings behind each of them. For example, squirrel eating grapes, it's just cute, or more than that. Let us find out. Also, let us see how paintings are presented with different style. All the paintings in the exhibition are from Korea's Joseon period. Joseon is a dynasty that lasted for around 5 centuries, from 1392 to 1910. And Korea is here at the east end of Asia. And this map on the right is a map of Joseon in 15th century. So the territory of Joseon is very similar to nowadays Korean peninsula, combining South and North Korea. Now we have the division here, North and South. And due to the, and you can see Joseon and China, Ming China, share their borders. So due to the proximity, Korea has always had close relationship with China. Joseon chose Confucianism as the state philosophy, so literary scholars were esteemed in the society. With this in mind, we have a lot of motifs that were favored by literary class, and we are going to review some of them in the following slides. The first motif we are going to talk about is landscape. There are several landscape paintings in the Cowles collection. And this landscape painting is the earliest example in the exhibit, which dates back to 16th century. In Asia, landscape painting is more than just recording the surroundings. It reflects a culture's understanding of the relationship between humankind and nature. As an agricultural country, Korean people has always had strong admiration for nature. They believe it has strong spirits associated to them, and capturing these strong characteristics and aspects on the limited space on paper or silk further reflects the artist's strong appreciation for their surroundings. In Joseon Dynasty, landscape developed in conjunction with scholar, official, or literary class. Early Joseon period landscape painters embraced the style of early Chinese masters, and at the same time, they created their own masterpieces using personal interpretation. So, if you see the painting, so you see the layered of craggy mountains are floating in the misty air, and strong wind is blowing from the left, making all the trees swing to the right. And peaks in the distance, peaks in the distance are fading out here. And there is a waterfall here in the middle ground, you can see here. And boats are anchored in the windy weather. And then here, in the foreground, there is a man holding an umbrella walking to the cottage in the on here. Here's a cottage, and he's walking to the home. So the painting is overall made using wet and thin wash with a strong contrast that creates a dramatic effect and gives three-dimensionality. These features of composition, using strong contrast of ink and ethereal atmosphere, are characteristics of early Joseon landscape painting. If we want to talk about early Joseon landscape painting, we should know about this artist who is a prominent Korean painter in 15th century named An Gyun. And this painting is his representative work that was painted in 1447. He was a court painter in Joseon, and one of his patrons was a prince in Joseon. And one day, the prince had a dream about ideal land and described this lands from his dream to An Gyun, the artist. And after this story, An Gyun completed this imaginary landscape. This is a huge painting, but I will not take too much time on explaining this. But you will see the mounds of mountains harmonizing with one another and the misty atmosphere in it. It is said that An Gyun drew part of his inspiration from 10th and 11th century Chinese painter Li Cheng and Guo Xi. Here on the left, this is a painting by a Northern Song painter, Guo Xi, early spring. And you will notice that there are some connection in terms of composition and subject. So you also can see they both use the bare seal to illustrate the misty air. And then here they have like rocky cliff in the foreground. With these Chinese models as references, An Gyun developed a personal landscape idioms and created his own style. Both paintings here used the similar subject and the subject matter and composition. And An Gyun has more, unlike Guo Xi's example, An Gyun has more wet brush and more emphasize his personal style. And An Gyun's style influenced many painters of the next generation in Joseon. Paintings of expressions of windy landscape was also done by An Gyun and his followers in the early Joseon period as a series of seasonal paintings. The painting on the left is also by An Gyun, and it is a scene of the late summer from an album depicting 4 seasons. The painting on the right from a collection in Japan is an example of how 16th century painters carry forward his style. And you can notice this windy landscape and misty air. Here, I'm comparing the same An Gyun painting. This was the same as previous slide. And on the right is the detail of the Cowles landscape. And we can see how closely the artist of the Cowles painting follows An Gyun's model. One difference, though, is that the Cowles artists make greater use of wash. Here you can see. And look at the entire Cowles landscape once more. This painting bears an interesting seal at the lower left corner, reading Muncheong or Bunsei in Japanese, who is known as being active in Japan in the 15th century. There is not much known about the artist Muncheong, even his national identity, whether he is Korean who went to Japan or Japanese, is a topic of debate. Anyway, there was a study that the practice of stamping a seal of Muncheong on high-quality Korean-style painting during the Edo period Japan was performed to increase their value. So the painting may not done by Muncheong or Bunsei, but having this seal proves that this was like very high-value Joseon painting in Japan. Next, we have a landscape album that is very different from the previous windy landscape. This 8-page album is an extremely rare because it is very plausibly by one of the most famous but mysterious painters in Joseon Period, named Lee Jung. Lee Jung died at a very young age when he was only 30 years old due to his known habit of heavy drinking. So there are not many paintings by him available today. Lee Jung was born into a court painter's family, so he learned painting from a very young age from his uncle, who was also a court painter. Lee Jung was celebrated as a prodigy by his contemporaries, and he's known that he was skilled at figure painting, Buddhist painting, also in landscape paintings, which are the main genre of paintings at the time. This is another pages of the album, and all of the paintings in the album depict peaceful and ideal landscapes. Sometimes figures are included in the painting, like scholar is sitting on the cliff and then looking the moon. And then here another scholar is in the cottage. It's a little book, so reading a book here. And here, a fisherman is coming back to his home. So these are famous themes in Chinese paintings. And Lee Jung had many social connections with influential figures at the time, and some of them were Joseon government officials and scholars who visited China very often. So it is possibly through these connections that Lee Jung learned about Chinese paintings and adopted these motifs. So far, I have presented landscape paintings of different styles of brushwork. And now, I want to showcase this unique painting made in a very different medium. As you can see, the painting is in brown color. Do you know why? Did artists use brown tone ink? Actually, the medium that artist used was iron instead of a brush. And he burns the paper instead of a painting with ink. And this technique, using hot iron on paper, is called pyrography, or burnt painting. And as you can see from the details of the painting, the artist attempts to produce different styles of ironwork, similar to different style of brushwork in the previous paintings. This technique became popular in the late Joseon through Japanese colonial period, which is from 1910 to 1945. Japanese government promoted pyrography in the expositions and invited pyrography artists to do demonstrations. The photo on the left here, this guy is one of the most famous pyrography artists at the time, whose name is Park Gedam. And the Park family inherited this technique over generations. And the artist here, Park Gedam, is the older relative of Park Byung-soo, who is the artist in Cowles' collection. And here, the photo on the right is the artist who continues pyrography these days. He is the only pyrography artist in Korea, and he was designated as a living treasure last year. So, the technique became popular, and I put this image to help you understand how this paint was made. So he holds iron. This is iron. He hit the iron and then hold the iron on the right hand like he holds brush. And he has a loop guide here on the left hand to give extra support. And very careful control over heat and power is needed to master this technique. pyrography was regarded more as a craft, and birds and flowers are common subject matter for this medium. The unique aspect about this Cowles pyrography painting is that this is a landscape painting, which is the most representative genre of literary painting. And here, in this painting, shares its tradition as literary ink paintings, like having poems on the painting, and then have a signature and seals of the artist. So these two seals are artist seal, and this seal literally means fire painting. So it explains its technique. And then here in the inscription says, Joseon, Jeonju by Chosan. And Joseon is the country name, and Jeonju is a region name of southwest Korea. And then Jeonju was famous for robust and high quality paper. So only paper made in Jeonju area can endure the heat of the iron without having holes. So, and the Park Byung-soo, the artist, is also from Jeonju region. And considering having this kind of provenance in the painting, this painting was probably made for export to Japan. Moving on to a different subject matter that also has a symbolic meaning. Images of nature motifs in Joseon painting are seldom straightforward representations, but rather has a deeper meaning with regards to the values of the literary class. Most of the paintings in the exhibition were executed by and for literary class, so their values were reflected on them. Plum blossoms, orchid, bamboo, and chrysanthemum embody Confucian traits in East Asia, and they were cherished by literary painters. So these four gentlemen were painted to represent Confucian ideal. And in the 19th century Joseon, literary paintings highlight more on implicative meanings, so these four gentlemen were very popular during this time. Among these four gentlemen, orchid painting was especially beloved in the late Joseon period. Because orchid grow in the deep mountain and spreading its fragrance to the distance, so it resembles an ostentatious but elegant scholar. There is an interesting expression when Korean people say painting orchid. Instead of using verb paint, they use the verb 치다, 난을 치다. So 치다 has various meanings, but the basic meaning of this is to hit. So when you use 치다 for like clapping your hands or hitting the drum, and it embraces the meaning of dashing off with one stroke of brush when you paint orchid. Because painting leaves of orchid is similar to writing stroke of Chinese characters in calligraphy. So using this special verb to orchid painting also has strong connection to calligraphy. The artist of this orchid painting is Lee Ha-eung. He was not a professional painter, but he was a father of King Gojong, the last king of Joseon dynasty and the first emperor of Korean Empire. Lee Ha-eung lived in one of the most turbulent and bleak periods for Joseon, when the dynasty came to the end. Lee Ha-eung was at the center of the tragic history of Joseon, and he kept painting orchids throughout his lifetime. Maybe painting orchid might be a way of sublimating his agony and pain. The painting shows 5 orchids in different sizes and different ink tonalities. So orchid in the bottom is the largest, and the one in the top is the smallest, and it seems it is faded out into the air. That suggests spatial recession. And this kind of painting group of orchid is an example of his mature style. Besides orchid, rocks were also a favorite subject matter in late Joseon period. In Korea, similar as in China, collecting rocks of interesting shape was a popular hobby among the literary scholar. Literary people like to display rocks in their studio and drew the inspiration from them, because they do not have to go out to the nature to paint or compose poetry, and rather they just watch these rocks in their studio and then they do work. So that's why this kind of rock is called scholar's rock. And we have an example of this scholar's rock. This is our collection. And now you can see this in the Chinese gallery upstairs. Like a landscape painting, the rock represents a microcosm of the universe that scholars can meditate with. It is a miniature of mountain, so it has yin and yang because it has mass and void, so it has all the virtues of nature. And besides embracing features of landscape, rocks also represent eternity and longevity because it does not change or die. Chung Ha-kyo, the artist of the painting, is among the most famous Korean artists to specialize in this subject. In this painting, his dry and light brushwork imparts a tactile quality to the rock, while the alteration of mass and void gives an appealing of eccentricity. And the depiction of rocks in his painting emphasize their solidity also. And here, in this painting, he paints orchids with the rocks to enhance the meaning of a scholar's virtue. In addition to his rock paintings, Chung Ha-kyo is equally well known for his unique and unconventional calligraphy style. So you can see characters are like elongated, and then vertical lines are going down. So this kind of light and elongated vertical style is his trademark. And there are several paintings depicting grapevines in Cowles' collection. Grapes originated in Western Asia and was introduced to Korea through the Silk Road. Because of their clustered forms and having many seeds, grapes symbolize abundance and fertility. Grape motifs quickly spread out to Korea, and it gained great popularity as ceramic decorations throughout both the Goryeo and Joseon period. So like these examples, grapes was popular motifs being embellished on ceramics because of its symbolic meaning and decorative feature. So this is an example from the National Museum of Korea, Celadon from Goryeo Dynasty. So you can see the red color grapes painted with iron here, and the boys are playing on the grapevines. And here, grapes, this is copper, and this, the iron painted grapes are embellished on very elegant porcelain. And ink paintings of grapevines are thought to have originated with the Chinese Chan Buddhist monk who was active in the 12th and 13th centuries. Painting of grapes and grapevines became a favorite pictorial subject among Korean scholar painters after the 16th century and remained popular throughout the Joseon dynasty. In the late Joseon period, grapevine paintings in large format like these became popular. Here on the left is a 17th century example from National Museum of Korea collection, and it shows a large swirling grapevine painted on a set of 8 hanging scrolls. And in some examples, grapevine is depicted on 6 or 8 panels of screen, such as the Lakma example here on the right. In Cowles' collection, grapevine paintings are in hanging scroll format. And here, we see all different styles of grapevines. Some grapes are depicted in more detailed brushwork, some are more abstract, and the twisting vines and curling tendrils are all in different style. The artists modulate ink tones in each way to make paintings more alive. I really encourage all of you to go back to the gallery after the talk to compare styles of each painting. One of the unique aspects of this group of grapevine paintings is the addition of squirrels, as in these examples. A member of the rodent family, squirrels have a positive association with abundance and fertility. So they also represent the playful nature of children. So together, squirrels and grapevines carry good wishes for affluence and have many offspring. This is another example of squirrels and grapevines. This pair scroll show these two very cute squirrels from very different angle. And many of the paintings depicting squirrels and grapevines have survived in Japan, where it seemed to have been an especially popular subject. I think one of the reasons is that in Japan, grapes and squirrel became a pun for excelling in martial arts. So it is possible some of these paintings were made explicitly for Japanese market. From these paintings, we can see various ink play. For the squirrel, finely detailed brushwork is used by very narrow brush. It was done with many repeated strokes to illustrate their fur. And the technique called flying white is used for some of the branches of grapevines. Flying white is used both in calligraphy and painting, employing a dry and fast brush to create crack line with like this unpainted white part. For some plum grapes, boneless style was used, which is painted without outline, like this. And the technique called dripping in was used for one of the grapevine paintings. And the artist first used very dry crisscross strokes to have this kind of white little specks here. And then the artist drips ink before the previous ink has completely dried. So it creates this gradational and blurry effect. So it is very interesting to see all the different presentations of similar subjects. So I again encourage you to see the paintings in person. Last symbol that we will see is tiger. Tiger in Korea has always been the most spiritual animal representing power. So instead of Lion King, Korean people always thought Lion King, we always thought Tiger King. So the tiger painting was very popular in the late Joseon after symbols of courage and mystique were added. As tiger lived in deep in the mountains, they were also regarded as guardians of the mountain. The tiger painting in Cowles' collection depicts a mother tiger and 3 cubs along with 2 magpies under a pine tree. So the 2 cubs here are playing with each other, and while the mother is looking them, and a 3rd baby tiger is hiding behind the tree. And when you see 3 cubs closely, you will notice that 2 cubs are in stripe pattern, like tiger pattern, and 1 here is leopard, right? And in Asia, tigers and leopard are sometimes regarded in the same family. So sometimes polka dot and stripe patterns can be found in a single animal like this. So head is dot and body has stripe pattern. And tiger is a common theme in Korean folk painting, and it is painted as a comic creature like this. And sometimes in Joseon folk painting, tiger and magpie has a satirical meaning compared to the ruling class. Tiger stands for ruling class, and magpie stands for common people. So tiger is usually depicted a goofy face, while the magpie is lecturing to tiger. But the tiger painting in the Cowles collection shows rather seriousness of the tiger and also shows the love of family. In this painting, tiger shows its dignity, affection, also filial piety. And magpie here stands for good messenger for good fortune. So, I hope that everyone has picked up the message that simple, ordinary objects have deeper meanings. Also, we have observed many different forms of brushwork that were used in paintings. Common subjects like rocks, squirrels, grapes have meanings that represent longevity, fecundity, and prosperity. So I pose this question again to everyone. After this presentation, what do they mean? This grapevine, orchid, squirrel, tiger, rock. What do they mean? And what meanings do you see from them? And what brushwork do you see from each of them? These are styles and symbols in Korean ink painting. Thank you.
We have 2 microphones running on each side of the auditorium for any questions.
Thank you ever so much. Good job. This is wonderful. I'd like to ask if you might explain and interpret the calligraphy. Were the gifts, was poetry written in the calligraphy? What is the message in the calligraphy?
On which painting?
Well, any of them that had an elaborate.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't.
No, yeah. So
And thank
actually
you.
we have one calligraphy at the exhibition, but I didn't explain it today. But that calligraphy, just briefly speaking, that 6-panel calligraphy is done by an envoy of Joseon who went to Japan. And each panel has each characters, and the 6th character has Confucian virtue. And let's look at some paintings here, like this. This pyrography landscape. Here, this is the poem inscription, and then this is a poem about the landscape. And when we translate this, it sings blue and green layered mountains, but we just see brown landscape here. But the artists, just appreciate the nature. So usually the accompanied poem is related to the subject matter. And orchid, in orchid painting, here, the inscription here talks about talks about the orchids, how, elegant it is. Yeah, so usually it connects to the subject. Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much. You remind me to look carefully at the works as I pass by them. Can you show this very first landscape slide that you showed earlier with the wind blowing from left to right? You mentioned that there is a spiritual quality in the paintings. Call me zoological, but I see a dragon figure at the top,
Ah,
nose pointing left.
here?
Yes.
Ah,
I see a lion with head down in the middle and a sort of tail that's the path going up or whatever. And then an undefined creature at the bottom with nose, eyes
Yeah.
looking
Okay.
left.
ah, that's
Not-
good point.
Now, if we could look at the very last one you showed of the rock.
Mm-hmm. This?
Yes, now tell me at the very top that that's not a scholar looking up at the moon or at the clouds, finding inspiration.
Here? Or other
On the
landscape?
left, on the left.
Okay. Okay.
And again, thank you for telling
you.
me to look carefully at the works.
Thank you.
You mentioned the special paper used for the pyrography, I guess. Was that a Kozo paper or what? How did they get that so they didn't burn the holes? First of all, what was the composition? And second of all, could you talk just a little bit about that?
I am not a paper specialist, so I don't know what it's made, but it's usually mulberry paper. And then the Jeonju area, they are also famous with they have lots of trees, good trees, and then they have long tradition of making paper. So I think the paper itself is I think it's the same source, but the technique is they can make really strong, so it doesn't have holes. Yeah, I know that there is a record saying that this pyrography technique is coming from China, but it's in the early 20th century that Korea was the only place that we can see this pyrography painting. We saw that pyrography on bamboo or pyrography on leather, but on paper is, I think, only in Korea at the time. Yeah.
Thank you, Sangha. In the one example that you gave for the pyrography, it looked as though it was originally pencil, and then they were burning on top of that. Is that the technique that?
This?
Yes. So right below where the cottage is.
Oh. Yeah, I think this is his hand. So I think sometimes he draws and with pencil and then to burn the paper. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think but I don't know at the previous time they did it too.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
And then the other question is, was satin a common substrate in addition to paper and silk? Because one of the pieces.
Yeah, orchid painting was on silk, and that's the only example on satin satin, and that's the only example from Cowles' collection, and then that's not that common. Yeah, and then paper is more common, and then silk is more high quality for more high quality painting, and satin is relatively rare compared to them.
And do we have a final question? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.